Awakening your everyday wisdom. Aliens and UFOs. Are they real? There's a ton of information out there indicating the existence of aliens in, on, and around our planet. But what do we believe? And if they're not real, why all the hype? Why all the movies and documentaries and newspaper reports, clippings, sightings? It just goes on and on. If they don't exist, why are we making such a big deal out of it? Makes me wonder. I'd like us to take a look at what does it really mean to us individually, if aliens exist or not. How can it affect our lives? And should we try to do anything about it? Even if we believe that there are aliens around us, what can we do about it? Those are some questions. Each of us will need to decide what to believe and what to discard. Let's start with these definitions. Merriam-Webster. Unidentified flying object, UFO. A flying object in the sky that some people believe could be spaceships from another planet. And then we have in Wikipedia a definition of extraterrestrial life, also called alien life. It's life that occurs outside of Earth and did not originate on Earth. And then the science of extraterrestrial life is, in all of its forms, is called exobiology. So probably the most famous UFO sighting in the United States was the one at Roswell. There's a documentary on the History Channel about this, and I'm not going to go into the details. Most of us have already heard a lot about this, but it is pretty interesting when you look at this story and all the different sightings that occurred after 1947. So between 47 and 1969, there were over 12,000 UFO sightings reported to the United States Project Blue Book. Now, this was a top secret Air Force team, and their mission was to scientifically investigate the incidents and determine whether any of them posed a threat to national security or not. Now, it's been estimated that 95% of these reported sightings were explained either by natural phenomenon or mistaken identity or some other reason why the government said, no, this is no threat to our security, and it wasn't even a real UFO. Okay, but what about the other 5%, which might be a pretty low percentage, but that's 600 reports that they could not deny. And this is up to 1969, so imagine what's come in since then. And there have been some other investigative teams put together on this topic. So even if there were only 600 accounts that could not be explained, what does that actually mean? Does that mean they were alien spacecrafts? Ooh. All right, so this History Channel, they've also got a documentary on the 5 most credible modern UFO sightings. I'm not going to go into details on them, I'm just going to give you a quick little list. But there's plenty of information if you want to check them out for yourself. Number 1, the lights above the New Jersey Turnpike, 2001. I actually watched this documentary. It's pretty amazing. Lots of eyewitnesses. And then the USS Nimitz Encounter, 2004. O'Hare International Airport saucer, 2006. The Stevensville Sightings, 2008. And East Coast Go Fast Video, 2015. Yeah, these are on the History Channel. They're not on somebody's cell phone, you know? So I think we ought to take a closer look at some of the evidence. One of the best documentaries I've seen on UFOs is called The Phoenix Lights. I Know What I Saw. You know, after watching this, it would be really hard for me to say that we are not being visited. But I leave it up to you to decide for yourself, of course. Now, there has been a declassification of some of the government documents, and these came about by a lawsuit by a civilian against the National Security Agency. So the NSA and the Central Security Service, the CSS, declassified these documents that were on file. It's not an easy read, but it is there for you if you want to take a look at them. And some of them are pretty convincing. So again, you get to decide. The link for this resource is going to be at the end of the video, but you could just Google the NSA lawsuit on retaining information on alien activity, and you'll find it. There's a lot more information about this same lawsuit on another link, and I've also got that in the references at the end of the video. So let's talk about alien abductions. First, my heart and my sympathy go out to any victims and all victims who have experienced something of such a traumatic nature. And I'm not saying that there were or weren't alien abductions. I tend to believe some of the reports that I've seen. But even if they weren't, can you imagine the frightening experience that somebody would go through if they only thought they had been abducted by aliens? And then, if they had been, just try to put yourself in that spot. What would you do? Especially knowing that you might be ridiculed if you come forth, or if you try to get help. You might be seen as a nutcase. It's got to be a terrible spot to be in. So I do have a tremendous amount of care for the people who have reported alien abduction. Some of the reports say, well, it was due to a psychotic breakdown or false memories or mental problems of the people coming forth. But there are also some accounts that leave a lot of questions in your mind. Would these people really fake some of the evidence that they're bringing forth? I tend to believe people. There's also some suspicion that our own U.S. military rangers are implicated in this. Some people are coming forth saying that they abduct citizens and do psychological and physiological testing on them. And then after they've been drugged and so forth, bring them back to their homes and leave just as secretly as they came in. And the people are left with these horrendous afterthoughts and after experiences. Personally, I'm not going to believe that. And it's because I don't want to. there are so many stories going on right now about evil acts by our own United States government. It's really making me very concerned, because I have believed all my life that this is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, country to live in. And all these disparaging remarks are getting to me. So I'm not going to believe this, but it is kind of in the back of my mind. Holy smokes, what if? So let's talk about ancient aliens. Along with the Ancient Alien series on the History Channel, it's becoming one of my favorite channels on this topic, we have some old documentaries that are very interesting, way before photoshopping would have been a concern. And, they're kind of hard to watch because the abilities of us to produce good films back then was a lot more limited. But we've got Chariot of the Gods by Erich von Daniken. And then we've got one that I actually watched recently by Rod Sterling. He's the narrator in it, called In Search of Ancient Astronauts. Both of these old documents make some of the same references, but they're very, very interesting, the facts that they tie together. I'm not going to go into all the facts, but if you want to learn more about this topic, that's a kind of a fun place to start. The gist of both of these all of these documentaries on ancient aliens is that yes, Earth has been visited, and there have been aliens walking among us for many, many, many years. So I want to take another look at a different angle on this topic, and that is from the Bible. Now, I mentioned in a previous video that when I started waking up to all these things that are going on in the world, I was very confused and frustrated, not knowing what to believe, not knowing what was real. So I decided to go back to my roots, back to my Protestant Christian upbringing, and I started reading the Bible again. Well, it didn't take very long until that familiar feeling came over me, like, I don't really know what the Bible is saying here. You know, whenever I read the Bible, I'm always a little confused by that too. Even though I think there's a lot of great information in it, I'm not putting it down by any means. But I hadn't gotten very far when I came across Genesis chapter 6. Now, I am going to quote word for word on this, because I don't want to be accused of interpreting or manipulating what I read. So this is coming from the New International Version of the Bible, and the reason I read that is it's a little gentler language to get your arms around. But here it is, Genesis 6. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. When the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them, they were the heroes of old, men of renown. Actually, I read this about 4 or 5 times. Really? The sons of God came came down and made babies with human daughters. And I'm like, all right, who were the sons of God? Were they aliens? Ugh. Some people say they were fallen angels or demons. And I'm like, well, it would be hard to prove any of that, but it certainly is a mystery. So then I said, well, I wonder if there's anything else in the Bible that might indicate alien life. So I did another Google search, and sure enough, from BibleStudyTools.com, there is a list of 30 biblical references to alien activity on Earth. I read some of them and I thought it was a pretty big stretch, but this one caught my attention. And I don't really know enough about the backdrop of this because I'm not a biblical scholar, but apparently Ezekiel had quite a vision. So in Ezekiel 1, verse 4, I'm going to quote this too, but this story of his vision goes on and on. I'm just going to give you a snippet of it. If you're interested, go ahead and look it up for yourself. But here it goes. This is just the first little part. I looked, and I saw a windstorm coming from the north, an immense cloud with flashing lightning and surrounded by brilliant light. The center of the light looks like glowing metal, and in the fire was what looked like 4 living creatures. So that's how it starts out. It's just a teaser. When I read this whole account, I'm like, all right, what was Ezekiel imagining or envisioning here? What was this all about? This glowing metal coming down from the sky and fiery lightning and brilliant light, and it sounds like some of the alien sightings we've seen and we've heard reports of. So anyhow, I just thought it was interesting. I'm not going to try to prove or disprove anything, but I think for me, it helped me realize that having an open mind is probably a good approach to this topic. And then NBC News provided some interesting facts. I think they had 6 facts in this piece on the notion that we might not be alone. Now, I kind of skimmed over the article, and so I didn't get really deep in it, but I didn't see any place in there where they were saying, yes, we're being visited by aliens today on Earth, but more like the feasibility of us being the only intelligent life in the whole universe is quite slim. And then they gave some evidence to back up that statement. Again, this link will be in the resource section at the end of the video. So what are some other signs that we might have alien activity on planet Earth? You know, I look at the crop circles, and apparently there have been some hoaxes. I saw some of that. But there are some that could not possibly have been done by humans, especially in the amount of time that they appeared on these crops. And some of them appeared in broad daylight. Like they were there, a couple hours later. I mean, they weren't there, and then a couple hours later they were there. Big ones, you know? And I'm like, okay, who could have done that? And I also saw a documentary that had some video recordings of some orbs of light over the crop circles. You know, that could be convincing. Another indication that we might have aliens doing some artwork on our planet are the geoglyphs. And you may have seen some of these, Peru and various places around the world. And I have to stop and say, okay, could humans have actually created these? Some of them you can't even see except from the air. So how humans created these geoglyphs, I couldn't tell you. One that really caught my fancy was 1990 on a dry lake bed in Oregon. Now I saw some of the reports on this not too far after it had occurred. Today, when I went back, I think I tried to look this up again about a month ago, and some of the reports looked to me like they had been altered. But I'll tell you the story. 1990, there were some pilots, and I believe they were with the Navy, but they did regular trainings. Day after day, they flew over this dry lake bed, did their maneuvers and all the things they were practicing, and then they flew back in the afternoon to their base. It was a routine. One day, as they were flying back to their base, they're looking down and they see this geoglyph. And they go, whoa, wait a minute, that wasn't there this morning. And they kind of, from the story I read, checked with each other. No, it wasn't there. Well, it took 30 days for our government to come out with an official report. And what they came up with is there were 5 guys who were artists or architects or something who claimed that they camped out on this dry lake bed for about a week and they made this geoglyph. Now, when you see the drawing, you can see how precise this figure is. Triangle after triangle over top of triangles. The equipment that would have been required to create such a geoglyph would have had to be very sophisticated. And they said they did it with garden tools. Now, the pilots didn't see any evidence of any humans on the site. There weren't any tents or anything, no soda pop bottles, not even footprints. Or there weren't even any piles of the displaced dirt that would have had to come out of these trenches. 10 inches wide, 3 inches deep, that's a lot of dirt that you'd have to shovel out and put somewhere. Wasn't there. So the official report of these 5 guys didn't really pan out. And as a matter of fact, there were some tests done. Can you even draw and dig out a straight line on a dry lake bed with garden tools? And it wasn't able to be reproduced. So anyhow, long story, intriguing. Check it out. There's still some information on it if you do a search. My question is, well, doesn't look like these 5 guys would have been capable of doing such a thing. If not them, who could have done such an incredible geoglyph? For me, it looks like aliens. So when I try to summarize all this in my own mind, I go, okay, we've got ancient alien information. If the information in the Bible was referring to any aliens, which, that's real debatable. We've got all these sightings. We've got declassified government reports. If any of this is true, what does that mean for human existence? Now, we've seen massive changes in technology, medicine, artificial intelligence. A lot of things are changing. And at the same time, the attention that we're giving to the ecological health of Earth, our education system, the food production system on our planet, they all seem to be backsliding. So we've got this huge move forward and we've got a huge move backward going on at the same time while we've got alien sightings going on. So I just say, I think we need to brace ourselves. I think we need to find a way to be balanced because it is very uncertain what's going to happen in the next 20 or 30 years. But I do know that we need to be strong. Thank you for listening and participating in this video. If you'd like to chat, here's my email address. Feel free to contact me. I'm here to provide support. And please like, share, comment, subscribe. Thank you very much. Blessings.